Hi, I'm Kendra Yurt. Welcome to Saint Spotlight.
And I'm Kristen Gallagher, and we're joined today by Angelo Centeno, a first year student at Thomas More, studying theology and educational studies.
Yeah, thank you all for having me.
So, Angelo, can you share a little bit about the path that led you to Thomas More and why did you choose to study here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a theology and educational studies major, and I learned or I discovered in the midst of my high school days that I was being called to something more, and I had a theology teacher who changed the course of my life, and I was like, I want to be that for other students. And so I wanted to study theology and learn more about the Catholic faith so that I can, in turn, be what my teacher was for me to my future students. And so I was like, what is a private Catholic school that's fairly close to home that, works for me? And so I came and visited Thomas More after meeting with Josh Ostertag, who's a campus minister. And I just fell in love. And I think the main thing that drew me to Thomas More was the chapel is at the center of the campus. And if that isn't symbolic, then I don't know what is, because it's like the faith is at the center of who we are. And that for me was a done deal. So, yeah.
So, when you were a student at St. Xavier High School, you discovered a desire for your vocation. What inspired you at that age towards this mission?
During my time at St. X, I discovered a vocation or calling to join the Xavierian Brothers after doing a number of different service opportunities. But the one that stuck out the most was a project called Sleep in Heavenly Peace. And so Sleep in Heavenly Peace is an organization that builds beds for low-income families who don't have beds. And so in the city of Louisville, they opened up a chapter in the West End area, which is a low-income area. And I started working with them my junior and senior year of high school. And I remember the first time I went into a family's house and I built a bed for, it was a mom, and I think she had about 3 kids. And we built beds for them, and we put sheets on the beds after we built the beds. And like the kids came into the room and their eyes just like lit up. And it was like something so simple was such a huge thing for them. And I think that was the moment that I knew that I had like fell in love with the service to God and to God's people. And so I was like, why do we do what we do? Why do we do service? Why do we go out into communities and do what we do as a Catholic school? And so I started to look at the teachings of the Xavierian Brothers, who founded St. Xavier High School in Louisville back in 1864. And it was just very attractive. The charism of the Xavierian Brothers and the mission of the brothers just made so much sense for my life. As students in Xavierian Brothers sponsored schools, we kind of have the mission that says, give the gift you have received as a gift. And like that within itself just makes so much sense, because God gives us so many gifts. So as disciples of Christ, we should in turn go out and give those gifts to the peoples of the world. And that for me is what drew me to the missionary life with the Xavierian Brothers. And God willing, after graduating from Thomas More, I'll return back to Kenya and join formation with the Xavierian Brothers, and in a short few years be a professed brother. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool. So, you did mention you traveled to Kenya over the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell us a little bit more about what were you doing there, and then what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I immediately after graduation, I got on a flight to go to Kenya, Nairobi. I stayed in Nairobi, Kenya, and Bungoma, Kenya. And so it all started when a Xavierian brother from Africa actually came to Louisville. And I sat down with him and I explained to him that I'm like falling in love with the congregation. I'm falling in love with service. And I know that the congregation now is kind of based in Africa. So I want to go to Africa. But for someone who has never been to Africa, that was such a huge, I had never been out of the country. So that was such a huge deal. And so I told my parents, and they were like, okay, we'll see. And so I remember hugging my mom in the airport. And I was like, wait, what am I getting myself into? But I traveled 26 hours. I arrived in Nairobi and I was greeted by a Xavierian brother by the name of Brother Dominic, who I had never met before, and that was our first interaction with each other. And he picked me up and he took me back to the community. So the Xavierian Brothers live in different communities spread out across Kenya, Congo, South Sudan, and yeah, that's kind of our main places in Africa. And so when I first got there, I entered into the house with what we call postulants, which is the kind of the second stage of religious formation for the brothers. And I was in deep prayer amongst them, a bit of formation. So when you're in formation, you take different classes to learn more about the history of the congregation, the mission of the congregation, and why we do what we do. And so that was my first two things before I moved out to Bungoma. And then when I moved to Bungoma, after about 2.5 weeks in Nairobi, I was teaching an English course to secondary students at our school, which is also named St. Xavier High School. It's just 8,000 miles away in Africa. And so I taught an English class in what's called CBC. So it's kind of a learning based on what the students like rather than like a set curriculum. And so all of my students loved American rap music, but half of them didn't understand it. So I was like, we're going to have an American rap class. And so I taught English based off of American rap. And so we would listen to the music, and whatever words the students didn't understand, I had them write it out on their paper. And then we would go through a dictionary, find the word, and then I would have them write an essay based on the words that they didn't know after we learned the words. And it was like, that was probably the best 3 weeks of my life teaching like American rap music, because I personally don't listen to rap music, but it opened me up to like kind of like rap music because I was teaching them. And we just had a fun time. And so I think that was what made me like very comfortable during what was a really uncomfortable time throughout my entire journey. So yeah, so I know that was a lot, but that was like, Kenya, it was wonderful. So being in deep prayer with the brothers, participating in the mission with the brothers, and being amongst the students who I will be teaching in a few short years was very wholesome. And we also have a rescue center that we run in Bungoma, Kenya, which I spent a lot of time there as well. So the rescue center brings in boys off the streets who are having family struggles or are battling addiction. And so the brothers go out and we get these students or these young men and we bring them into the rescue center. We take them to hospitals and get them evaluated and see what kind of health issues they're having, what kind of drugs they're addicted to, and different things like that. And then after we evaluate them in the hospital, we bring them back to the rescue center, and they take daily courses in English, math, science, and just kind of like basic life skills. And they also help out a lot around the compound with added free time. And so we kind of rehabilitate them so when they leave us, that they can re-enter society as functioning citizens. And a lot of the boys who are in the rescue center go through our secondary school as well. So when they leave the rescue center, they enter the secondary school and we teach them. So the brothers have really strong connections with all of the people that they serve. And I think that was another thing that attracted me to the congregation, is because I'm a huge people person. Obviously, you all can tell by how much I'm talking. I'm very extroverted. I'm very talkative. And so that was what was like really attractive to me as well, was building connections with these people. And I think the biggest lesson that I learned was when doing service, it's not like us versus them. It's us with them. And so as much as I gave them, they really gave me a lot, spiritually, mentally, faith-wise. Like, I received a lot from them, and I think I received more from them than what I brought to the table. And I think that's the biggest lesson we can learn while doing service. Like, it's us with them, not us against them. And yeah.
That's really great. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So what has your family's reaction been to all of this, and have they been supportive of you?
They have been extremely supportive. Like, I like to think of it as a miracle. My family is not Catholic. I converted to the faith last March. On Easter, I received baptism, confirmation, and First Holy Communion. And my parents were there to witness that. And I think they just knew that, apart from my siblings, that I was very, like, different. And they were like, I remember telling my mom, I wanted to become a religious brother. And she was like, well, how are you going to make money? And I was like, Mom, you're obviously not Catholic. Like, you obviously don't know what a religious order is. I was like, it's not about the money for me. And when I explained that to her, she was like, oh, I've got to support this kid. Like, I love him with all my heart. He's going to go do amazing things. And so I want to support him in the best way possible. And at first, she was her and my dad were both skeptical. Like, he's going to Africa. We don't know these people. We don't know where he's staying. But they paid for all my vaccines. They paid for my flight. So I still look at that as a miracle because they didn't fully understand it, but they supported me regardless. And I'm like forever grateful for that. Because they really did. They went out on a limb. And I know it was hard for my mom. She called me every day I was there and was like, if you want me to buy your return flight early, I can. Like, I don't mind switching your flight. And I was like, no, I got to stay. I got to see it through, Mom. Like, I can't come home early. Like, I love you to death, but I can't leave early. But yeah, they're beyond supportive of not only me becoming Catholic apart from my family because my family isn't religious, but they were very supportive of that, and they're very supportive of my vocation as well. So,
Yeah, that's great. So, having gone through all of this, what message would you share, or what would you want other young people to know if they may feel a call to religious life?
I would say be open-minded. Open yourself up to the possibilities that God has in store for you, because there's so much out there, and you just have to find what's for you. And I'll say, like, before I had a call to become a religious, I was living for what other people liked. My first initial thought was to go to college, study political science on a pre-law track. And like when I told people that, their faces lit up. They're like, oh, you're going to be great. You're going to be phenomenal. And I was like, that's actually not what I want. But because it's like likable by other people, then that's what I'll do. But then I soon realized, like, don't be so closed-minded. Like, open yourself up. Do what you really like. What do you really like? And the answer to that was service to others. And so it was hard to adjust to, but that's the point. Like, nothing in life is easy. And I think the founder of the Xavierian Brothers says that very well. He says that nothing special is achieved without much effort, labor, and zeal. And I live by that. Like, I live by that day in and day out. And so, like, nothing's going to come easy, but you have to work hard for it because in the end, something special will be achieved. And another thing I would say is get outside of your comfort zone. Because if you're always in your comfort zone, you're probably never going to learn anything. And like when you're uncomfortable, yeah, it is not the best feeling to be uncomfortable all the time. But the majority of my trip in Africa was very uncomfortable. But I learned so much from it. And if I was comfortable the entire time, I would have learned nothing. And the language barrier, the different food, the different culture, like it was all very hard to adjust to. But I learned so much about my faith, and I learned so much about the people around me, which is it's incredible. And being outside of your comfort zone does that. And so I encourage young adults or even young people in general who is discerning a call to religious life, or discerning a vocation of any sort. Get outside of your comfort zone and open your heart up to the possibilities that God has for you.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
We love your story, thank you for coming on Saint Spotlight.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us today for our Saint Spotlight. If you want to see more videos like this, you can visit our YouTube channel. To submit a nomination for our future Saint Spotlight, you can click the link below.